Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the organisers for inviting me here to Torun, which has proved to be a remarkably interesting and engaging visit so far. I'm pleased and somewhat surprised to be the second speaker from Ireland today. I'm delighted, but not surprised, that several of the speakers earlier today have identified family carers, informal carers, or caregivers as being at the heart of the long-term care system. But I want to use the example of Ireland to ask some questions about what this recognition of the role and contribution of informal carers actually means for policy and practice, and what some of the challenges are for the years ahead, and I mean the immediate years ahead. As introduced, I'm now chair of what's called the Administrative Board of Family Carers Ireland. Family Carers Ireland is the largest voluntary charity organisation in the Republic providing services to carers. It also provides services to dependent people at home and is a recognised home care services provider. Altogether, we have about 500 full and part-time staff. I'm also the chair of the advisory board of the ESRC Centre for Care in the UK. This is a research centre established 3 years ago by the Economic and Social Research Council to lead and be the front organisation undertaking research in the UK on social care issues. The Economic and Social Research Council budget for this centre is quite generous and I think reflects the importance of research and particularly research on social care. I was formerly at Eurofound, which is an EU body, and I want to try to locate Ireland a little bit in the story of recent developments also at international level. You won't be surprised to know that in Ireland the population is still growing. Incidentally, it was 8 million in the 19th century and fell to 4 million, but now it's 5.25 million. And as in all the other countries that we've discussed today, the proportion of that population over the age of 65 and 80 or 85 is increasing. And one of the features of that increasing population is increasing rates of chronic illness. We have, by international standards, the expected number of family carers, about 1 in 8 adults. So we have 500,000 people in Ireland responding that they provide care to someone because of disability, dependency, on a regular basis. What I think is important about this 500,000 is first of all to acknowledge the large number. Secondly, to understand that that is 500,000 carers at any point in time. People take up care and people leave the role of carers. The person they're caring for dies. Their partner has a stroke. So there is a stock of 500,000 carers in Ireland, but also a flow into and out of care. which I think has important implications for the provision of services in a timely way when people take on care responsibilities. Most of those carers are providing between 30 and 60 hours of care a week. But a very large proportion are what are described as full-time carers. So when you look at the number of hours of care provided each week by informal carers in Ireland, you come to a figure of nearly 20 million hours a week. One of the problems for carers, as well as all those psychological and other emotional, physical difficulties, is the poverty or the financial difficulty associated with being a carer. And the state in Ireland provides some financial support to carers. It amounts to 1.7 billion euros a year. Most of that is in the form of a carer's allowance, but that only goes to carers who are providing full-time care and also who satisfy a means test. It's estimated, incidentally, that the carers in Ireland contribute about 20 billion euros worth of unpaid care each year. And you saw the figure in the first presentation this morning from the United States, estimating 600 billion. However you look at it, it's a very large figure. One important point, I think, is that recognition and awareness of the role and contribution of carers has been changing, has been developing, as Professor Blodowski said. This is reflected at the international level in some quite important documents reorienting long-term care, reflecting about long-term care in a more systems perspective. And a lot of you will be aware of the EU and the EU care strategy introduced in 2022, a care strategy which considers long-term care in relation to both children and adults. Fundamentally, it underlines the contribution that different actors play in providing long-term care, and it recognizes the contribution of unpaid family carers alongside the paid workforce. This was reflected in a conference of the International Foundation for Integrated Care this year, this July, in Belfast, which again underlined the recognition of the contribution of informal carers. And we see it too in documents on long-term care emerging now from OECD and from the World Health Organization, arguing for better coordination between formal and informal care, arguing for an integrated continuum and providing a framework for thinking about integration of activities of carers and care workers, paid workers, in different settings. So that's the context in which activity at national level in Ireland is being played out. This is a slide taken from the Centre for Care in Sheffield, which tries to illustrate long-term care as a system. It was interesting last night that the Marshal from the Pomerania region talked about ecosystems. Well, in Sheffield, they're trying to come to terms with the idea of care as an ecosystem. And what does it mean? Well, even as a system, It fundamentally means that care is provided by different resources and institutions, and there are very important interrelationships, very important connections between the care provided by the different sectors and organisations. You see here how care is divided between that which is visible, so care homes, hospitals, rehabilitation services, community rehabilitation, and so forth, and that which is invisible, which has applied to most of the care in the home. I like to think of the family or the informal carers as essentially the tree, some of it's visible, some of it invisible. And I'd also like to reflect that while some of the care, long-term care provided in the visible range is discussed in conferences like this, some of it very seldom is. And in particular, primary health care, what is going on in health centres and in general practice involving doctors but also nurses and health visitors is seldom discussed, and I think needs much more attention, since the primary care doctor is very often the first person that the carer connects with and the person who is providing long-term care. This point about the interconnectedness also underpins arguments being made to provide more support to carers. Yes, of course, we want to provide more support to carers to promote their well-being and quality of life. Yes, of course, we want to provide more support to carers because it will make a difference, we believe, to the quality of the care they provide, and thus the quality of life and well-being of the people they care for. But at societal level, the argument for providing better support to carers is very often because it will make the formal long-term care system, and indeed the hospital sector, more efficient and effective. We have many reports from the UK and Ireland talking about inappropriate admission to hospital and nursing homes. We have even more reports talking about delayed discharge from hospitals to the community sector. And those of you who follow developments in the UK will know that the recent report by Lord Darcy fundamentally says there are too many people in hospital in the UK who should be at home. What he doesn't say very much is that if they are going to be at home, then they're going to be supported by informal carers who also need support. So other arguments for supporting carers relate to hospital readmission, cancelled healthcare appointments, compliance in taking medication, and the impact on community and healthcare services to make them more effective. This is all very good. Sounds very reasonable to provide more support to carers. And in Ireland, there's definitely a sense that carers are being recognised. But Family Carers Ireland undertook an online survey at the beginning of this year to see how service provision to carers was currently working out. Of course, it was an online survey. The respondents are not a representative population of carers in Ireland. They are people on the whole who are providing many more hours of care, and people who are, therefore, probably most in need of formal care services. But what you see is that 3/4 of them say they don't believe that the individuals they care for receive enough support, and they themselves report receiving very few services. There's a particular interest at the moment in respite care, referred to in two presentations this morning, in its importance to give carers a break. But in this population of more than 2,000 carers with heavy caring needs, 72% said they had never received any respite care. And in general, the carers are experiencing difficulties in other aspects of their lives. 69% say they can't make ends meet, which is to say they don't have enough income to meet their daily needs. And nearly half of these carers say they are severely lonely. As a way of bridging the gap in some of this service provision, Family Carers Ireland provides some services to some carers, by no means comprehensive or universal. But the kind of services that carers are asking for underline the importance of providing good quality information at the right time. So a lot of it is around phone calls asking for advice and information. A smaller number of carers are receiving hands-on, direct personal support in 2023. A counselling service with a professional, or the number of professional counsellors, has been developing, and by last year was providing 5,000 hours of counselling, mostly online. Also, Family Carers provides some respite care, legal advice, supports carers group meetings, and provides services on request to all carers, not only to its membership. That membership, incidentally, is 11,000, and its fastest growing segment are the carers, or the long-term carers, of children, which we don't mention much here, but the organisation was set up to provide support to carers of older people. Increasingly, demand is from the carers of children. And there are some prospects that demand will be responded to with increasing services. In 2018, Family Carers Ireland approached the Irish government about developing a more comprehensive support programme for carers. And in 2020, the government of that day said they will seek to develop a carers guarantee to provide a core basket of services to carers across the country, regardless of where they live. Because at the moment, services are very uneven, available in some places, of course, and not others. That carers guarantee was funded to some extent in 2022, and we have high expectations that it will become a fully funded programme of government in 2025. And the service that will be provided, the counselling and advice, the coaching and training, it's intended, should be available across the country. It should go beyond only issues around the caring role, because after all, carers have, in many, many cases, a life beyond caring, in employment, with children, with other responsibilities. So we have just developed our 5-year plan, 2024 to 2028, basically, fundamentally aiming to reach the largest group of carers with online support, providing intense support and intensive services to the most needy, which would be the most needy being 8 or 10% of all carers. At the same time, improving our home care services, where yes, we're looking at the role of assistive technologies, but understanding that technologies, which will be the second half of the next of this session, have to be rolled out, have to be made available, not only successful in trials. And in our advocacy activities, we're fundamentally concerned to reach government to improve the financial situation of carers. We have had success this year with the development of a pension scheme for long-term carers who were not eligible previously, and we are campaigning to reduce or remove the means test for carers' financial benefits. However, the carers' agenda is one of only several health reform agendas in Ireland, and the government is trying to reform the health service, to reform the organisation of health and social care in this Launcher Care programme. And carers' issues are not the highest on the political agenda. However, underlying Launcher Care, underlying the reform of health services in Ireland, is the idea that they should be closer to the users, closer to the people with healthcare needs and their carers. It will be difficult to implement because there is this legacy of the postcode lottery. Where you live determines what services are available. So support is uneven and totally missing in some parts of the country. There are, of course, financial issues. The Irish financial situation is a relatively good one, but there's much competition for improving public services, particularly housing, transport, and carers are a small part of that agenda. And fundamentally, as others mentioned this morning, there are all the problems in social care, in long-term care, of recruitment. Recruitment of particularly home care workers, where we need to address pay and working conditions, but also now recruitment of staff who can provide support to carers. Finally, it's underlined not only by WHO and the EU and all the other organisations, but also at the national level, that sustainable care systems require joined up, integrated, coordinated approaches. Sustainable care will not be care that's provided exclusively by the formal care sector, it's unaffordable, or by the informal care sector, the demand is too great. The kind of intensive support and training that carers require will require significant investment with partnerships. Much was spoken this morning about teamwork. Yes, teamwork at the individual level, but perhaps also partnerships between the care sector and the informal care sector at local level. But we are fundamentally challenged by geographical inequalities in available provision, as well as the geographical inequalities in terms of needs, because there are more older people with healthcare needs in some parts of the country, for example, than there are in others. And finally, in my view, most of all, we need those policy and practice approaches that have been called for in government documents and in international documents to be translated into integrated approaches in reality. We have too few examples of initiatives involving primary health care and residential care services working together with family carers at the local level. And we are calling for the development of local family care partnerships between carers and these community supports. And there is the prospect of some kind of pilot projects to be developed in the very near future, which should be evaluated so that we have some evidence-based practice to support the call in policy. Thank you.